Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Transforming Trauma to Triumph. I'm your host, Diana Min, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Pat Armistead, who is going to be sharing her work and her lovely message with us today. And I'm so excited to have her on here with us. Thank you so much, Pat, for joining us.
Oh, a pleasure. Really nice to meet you. And yeah, good to see what we can contribute today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Pat, for those of our audience that don't know who you are or aren't familiar with your work, please share with us who you are, what you do, and who you help in the world today.
Sure. In 2001, as a result of a series of losses, I declared myself to be the world's first joyologist. And in the intervening 19 years, I've been delivering a range of programs. I do a stress, humour, health program. I've been doing a grieving program, and one of my main components up until COVID was delivering keynotes at conferences. More recently, my work has been very focused on supporting leaders to work more consciously and empathically so that the mental health and psychological well-being of their people can be supported. For a long time, I worked with managers and their teams, and I just didn't see the sustainability thing didn't occur. In the last 3 or 4 years, I've geared myself more to working with leaders now and loving the degree to which leaders are now more open to be working in this soft space, if you like. There was a time 15, 20 years ago when it was kind of hard work getting people at that level to engage in the softer side of things, but so much has happened. What happened? So much has happened, sorry, that has shifted how everyone's being, especially with the COVID phenomena.
Wow.
I was, in the early years, I was 16 years a registered nurse. So that brings a lot of good information to the fore. And then I actually always wanted to be an artist, but my mother said to me, well, that's lovely, dear, but I think you should get a proper job. And so it was that I went nursing. But when I left nursing, I was actually burnt out and ended up by default with my own advertising agency and ran that for 11 years, producing television commercials and freelancing for 2020 and 60 Minutes. So hugely creative role,
Yeah.
very diverse and varied. So I got to do my arts degree in that in that business. And now I'm really working to meld my compassion and my creativity to support people through grief and loss, to help people build resilience, manage adversity, and with a big aim to, I love the word equanimity. So,
Yeah.
to be in that equanimous space is to not be too buffeted by the storm. So you can really ride times. And COVID, I think especially, has shaken everybody at some level. So there's huge levels of anxiety and fear. And that's really hard to manage. So people need to be developing a lot of skills, and that's mostly internal because we can do some external stuff, but in the end, it's going to be up to us inside
Yeah.
to manage and hold that space. So I'm just gearing up to do a 5-part series on conscious leadership because consciousness is a word that's been there for a long time, but what is it?
Yeah.
So helping people explore the simplicity of that as opposed to the complexity, and supporting leaders again to be more conscious and to show them in a myriad of little ways what that means.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So amazing. Like, so that was incredible. I can't even, so much that I want to hold from that. Okay. I love that you are helping leaders be more conscious in organizations because I think, and what you said, having them be more open to working from this softer space, right? Because really understanding that from that softer space, you actually create better results. People are more productive, people are happier to be at work, and people are, essentially more abundant when they're coming from a place where they feel supported and whole. And, I think a lot, I've seen the shift of that really, hard force pushing type of energy in business to more of like that softer approach, being more in flow, being with ease. And I love that you brought up the word equanimity because I did a 10-day silent meditation in January.
Right.
Yeah, which is a Vipassana. And
Yes.
they talk about equanimity. I learned what equanimity is through 10 days of silence and meditation. And that has been pivotal for me, especially this year with everything going on. And I've seen just how, as I've carried, the benefits of that meditation out into my life, into my business, how everything has just continued to flow with ease because, like you said, we're not too high, we're not too low, we're just very present with what is. And from that place is where we really eliminate all suffering.
Yes. Yes. I don't have an illustration to show, but there's a map of consciousness that you might be aware of. And when we resonate at levels above 200, then we can be in flow and we can be working towards full self-expression. Below 200, we've got shame, guilt, fear, embarrassment. And shame in particular is like the lowest energy we can be holding. And so, one of the things that I'm working with people at the moment is you've got to heal your past. And that's everyone, all right, leaders included.
Yes.
Everyone has wounded aspects and it's not wrong or bad,
Right.
but we need to heal that in order to be clean ourselves so we can move forward. And when we, own what's happened and do whatever we need to heal it, then we can hold that resonance in a much more authentic way. And people notice. You notice people starting to shine because they're not carrying the weight of whatever that was, and there are, I think as a society, we've become grief illiterate.
Yes.
We don't know how to manage grief and we don't acknowledge it. And there's the grief of a loss of somebody close, but there's also all the little losses, all the rejections, the rebuttals, the redundancies. All of those things bring us some grief. The COVID phenomena, the loss of freedom, they're having to, stay inside, being locked up. They all create woundings which create a level of grief. And grief is cumulative. It's like stress. So, we don't have enough reverence and ceremony in our life. And that doesn't mean you've got to go all woo-woo to deal with it. But, as families, we hardly sit together at the table now, let alone have other ceremonial aspects. We've got Easter and Christmas. Other cultures like the Maori culture, the Aboriginal culture, Greek and Italian cultures are steeped in traditions. They have so many things they do on a daily basis, which helps to hold them together. This is how we do things, and there's depth and meaning. So, part of the things I've been suggesting is, I have this saying, how you set the table will determine how others will be. So as a leader, we've got that opportunity to literally and figuratively create the environment. What are we going to bring people into? What does it look like? What does it sound, smell, feel like. And for me, it's about creating that really high trust environment,
Mm.
because then we can do anything.
Right, right. And I think a lot of times, we don't feel safe to be vulnerable or to open up and talk about that grief or whatever it is. And I think, I think back to even, coming from an Asian culture, Asian background, like no one talks about anything. Everything is suppressed, everything is pushed down, and therefore then passed down through generations, through
Yeah.
trauma, genetics, through conditioning and all of those things. And as somebody who has been healing my generational trauma, understanding that having to face it is part of that healing. And like you said, we're very grief illiterate. We will, as a society, I agree, like we are constantly trying to push it down, avoid it, distract ourselves, and therefore it's never healed. And I love that, you're bringing to the forefront, okay, let's face it so that we can heal it, so that we can move forward and we can come from a place that's just lighter. And I love that you said lighter, because that really is what you feel when you start to really heal these things. You just begin to release the weight of the past that is just
Yeah.
like trudging you down.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Mm.
I want to hear more about your own personal journey as you've been. I mean, clearly you have experience with healing your own stuff, that you're so well versed in this. And I mean, I know there must have been some journey for you to have walked in order to be the light that you are now. Because I can feel how light you are. Even the fact that you're wearing yellow, it's just like you're bright.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The at the turn of the century, sounds so long ago, I had a whole series of losses. I lost my home and my business twice over that 4-year period, relocated to another country. I'm in Australia, but I did live in New Zealand for 20 years, have just returned to Australia. Um, Relocated over there with my partner, owing $80,000, which I actually repaid in 2 years. I was pretty proud of that. um, when I arrived there, the first 18 months that I was there, I had 10 car accidents, 9 times. Yes, I know.
Wow.
Nine times somebody ran up the back of me at a stop sign, and the 10th time somebody collected me in a roundabout. So I had a bit of crash karma happening then. And so they were all at around about 6-week intervals. My family hadn't been speaking since 1989. I had had cancer. I lost my first child, a daughter. And then the culmination of all of that, my partner of 20 years in 2001 left with another woman. And I never expected that was going to be the outcome of our relationship. I thought we'd grow old and crotchety together in a nursing home. And his parting words to me were, "No, I don't love you, and I never loved you." And at the time I thought, if that's true, then everything I've ever known is not true. So I disintegrated. I was quite a mess for a time, and my doctor wanted to medicate me, and I just kept saying to her, "No, help me deal with my grief." So I needed to find another doctor because she wasn't going to be the answer to that. So I found a practitioner who had a very integrated practice, a big meld of the East and West for modalities. And to this day, I remember that first visit with him. I had 90 minutes with him, and all he wanted to know was my story and the depth of that story. And towards the end of the session, he got his guitar out and sang me a song. And to this day, that stirs me emotionally. And we've been friends and colleagues, and he's not my doctor now because he's in another country, but remain very closely connected through that period. And I think that's what we need with those who are serving us to look after our own bodies. We need that closer connection, and it doesn't come with a 2 to 5 minute consultation where, you check your blood pressure and here's your prescription. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I I was very depressed at that time in 2001, and rather than be medicated, I ended up going to a grieving seminar at Starship Children's Hospital in Auckland and sat in a room with 400 parents who had lost their children. So one of the practitioners who had worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, you might know her name, he was there to support these parents to create their own networks once they left the embrace of Starship Hospital. So sitting in that room was pretty profound, as you can imagine, all these people, 400 people. So the energy was the anguish. You could almost taste the anguish. And 4 hours later, I had a conversation with a magician back over here in Australia who was inviting me to take laughter workshops to New Zealand. And it was in the middle of the conversation with him. He was telling me about laughter yoga. That's what he wanted to introduce me to. And there was just that little lull. You know how it can happen? It's like it's a peaceful lull in the conversation. It's not awkward. And in that little quiet moment, I got a message, and the message was, oh my God, we've got radiology, pathology, hematology, but no joyology. I'm going to be a joyologist. So that's where it began. I didn't know what it meant. I went and learnt laughter yoga. It's not a big part of my practice now, but I will refer people because some people have forgotten how to laugh. And laughter yoga is, I don't know if you know about it, but it's the fun you're having when you're not having fun. It's pretend laughter. You do all these laughter exercises and you begin to laugh for real.
Okay.
And the brain doesn't know the difference between when you're laughing, doing these laughter exercises, or laughing for real, because it's receiving the same stimulus.
Okay.
Are
you actually doing the yoga poses, or you're just like doing?
No, you do a lot of yoga breathing.
Okay, gotcha.
And you do exercises, but not like yoga, although it did have its origins from the yoga community.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I didn't know where I was going to go with joyology. It was like, well, you've given me that hint, but you haven't given me any real pointers. So I got clever. I did 2 pilot programs, just exploring humanity, really. The first was using laughter yoga, and I did that in an aged care setting. And did 90 days. And over that time frame, the general mood was lifted. It wasn't a clinical trial, so it's only anecdotal.
Yeah.
And it was sustained. And in that environment, it's really hard to sustain energy. Nurses need to work hard every day to lift and buoy spirits, because they tend to become passive recipients in aged care. So that was a remarkable result. And then I did a second pilot using Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. We don't just have IQ, but in fact have many. But in this day and age, we still only honour sport and academia. They're the 2 things that we give, we revere. Yeah. But we've got interpersonal intelligence, intra-emotional, spiritual, practical. But we don't get them anywhere near the same kind of recognition.
Yeah.
So that was a 12-month program. And it was at the end of that 15 months that I had enough. I'd been able to draw through all I wanted from my nursing background and other life experiences, and bring together that stress humour health program, which I began delivering. And in the beginning, it was received well in the health sector. And I knew the health sector, so I knew how to talk to them, but they're not necessarily good payers. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to make some money out of this, I really need to get into the business setting. And so began that journey. And the first couple of years were quite hard, a lot of phone calls, a lot of times people saying, well, look, I'm sure you're a very nice lady, Pat, but we have Fun Friday after work.
Yeah.
And of course, the program wasn't all about fun, but a big component of it was hooking back into what it means to be good-humoured. Yes. And for me, to be good-humoured is to be appropriately responsive or not, right? But if you're not going to be, you've got to really have a strong knowing and sense of what you can and can't do with this person or this group in order for it to work. So you've got to be very conscious, very connected, very empathic. You've got to have your intuitive ability on. You've got to have that switch on. So, you know, by 2004, things were going quite well. I toured with Patch Adams through Russia, visiting Russian orphanages in Clown Persona. We had 16 days, 8 in Moscow and 8 in St. Petersburg. And it was on that tour that I did lots of preparation. I went to clown school. I actually failed. I never did learn to juggle. But it wasn't about that.
Yeah.
This tour was really about connection. Patch said to me when I first rang him about going on the tour with him, he said, don't come because of me, Pat. Come because you want to find and spend your clown self. Come because you'd like to experience for yourself the disparity between rich and poor. Come because you'd like to make at least one Russian friend. So this tour was so deep. It was a sad, glad experience that over 1.5 million children live in impoverished conditions in these orphanages which aren't funded. So we would walk into stark poverty, no toilet paper, no hand towel, often padded dirt floor, no light bulbs, very often no light bulbs. And our mission was just to allow something to happen. So I really got that 16 days, we were present to all of it, the sad and the glad. And I returned from that trip feeling more vital and alive than ever in my whole life. And I realized afterwards that's because we were present to it all. We allowed that full emotional experience to be ours. And every night there were 36 of us, and every night we got together as a group and just downloaded what our daily experience had been and the learnings. And it gave me permission then to, when I came back, to fully step into and own what I'd been creating, because it was very much a pioneer journey. And I was in New Zealand, and it's a reasonably conservative little country. They weren't ready for a joyologist. It was like, what? Yeah. So my biggest stalwart through that period, I thought, I seriously need help. I need help to hold this space till I really get a solid platform. So I found a mentor. My mentor was the MD of Saatchi & Saatchi Auckland, and I'd heard what a genial man he was, and I thought, that's the one. You're for me. And then I got scared. It was like, oh, what am I going to say when I get to meet him? And life brings you opportunity sometimes. So in the mail came a tiny sample bottle of Dettol. You have Dettol over there?
I don't know. What is it?
An antiseptic.
Okay.
Yep. And I just got the idea. So I took that bottle of Dettol, a makeup sponge, 2 cotton buds and a Band-Aid, wrapped it in clear cellophane, put it in a little trunk, And when I met Mike, I gave him this little gift, and he opened the lid and pulled it out and said, "What's this, Pat?" And I said, "Well, Mike, I'm not here to sponge off you, but I do have the germ of an idea. It has a couple of applications, and I don't want it to be a Band-Aid job." I didn't know exactly in that first meeting where Joyology was going. And I said to him, "Will you be my mentor and will you help me source funding?" And he said yes and yes. First 5 minutes. The rest of that conversation was just about getting to know each other. And, I just can't, I was so scared. Oh, Saatchi and Saatchi, great place, great office. What am I going to say? And not negating the man in any way, but he was just a bloke. His wife bought him a chainsaw for Christmas. We position people sometimes as beyond our reach, but they're just like us.
Yeah.
They're all just like us.
Yeah.
And so he's been my mentor and friend right through to now. I put on in New Zealand, ran for 4 years, the Humour in Business Awards, and he was part of my board to deliver on that. And that was probably the making of everything, because it got the local newspaper, the editor was just so into humour. She just loved me. So I got, over that 4-year period, well over $1 million worth of free advertising, just double page spreads all the time around my work and what was rolling out. And look, I could never have afforded that. So, I knew I was called.
Yeah.
And I knew I was melding my compassion from nursing, creativity from advertising, and now developing something to serve humanity. So sometimes it takes some years to really get a sense of, now I get it. I know why that happened. I didn't really want to ever be a nurse, but I loved it. And then the advertising, which I loved even more. And then here we are now. And what I can bring to this business, when I enter a room, it's not just to do a workshop. There's like a raft of things. Yes, there's the program, but because I've allowed myself that diversity of experience, then I draw on it now. And I have so many stories this last 20 years because I got present to my life. So every time I step out, some little thing happens and it gives me yet another story of how I'm present.
Yeah.
Because things happen when you're present. They're just little, doesn't have to be remarkable. Yeah.
And everything is a stepping stone to the next. And I think when we're present, like you said, we're present to what is, we're quantumists, we understand that everything is temporary, right? So when we are in that present moment and we continue to open up ourselves to receive what's present, be present with what is, and then just allowing that to lead to the next step, Like you didn't know what Joyology was going to be, but you were present with what was in front of you, and you continued to follow that inner guidance that was showing up because you were present. And your story is incredible. I can listen to you all day. This is amazing. Yeah. So what is it that, for people that are listening to us right now that are in a place of turmoil or in a place of tragedy or just finding themselves, during this pandemic, either losing their job or losing loved ones or just not in their highest right now, what is something that you can offer to them where they can start to work through it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm finding for now, our current reality is not the truth of who we are. So there's the COVID phenomena, and there's also some ugly background. around the periphery of that, and the two seem to be intertwined.
Yeah.
And we can't allow ourselves to go down the rabbit hole. So to create the perception that, yes, this is the current reality, that's the truth of it. However, it's not the truth of who we really are.
Yes.
And when I did that first pilot program years ago, I had lost everyone. I was in a new country, still making friends. And when I went in, it was an aged care home. And when I walked into that place, they loved me unreservedly.
Oh.
So they reminded me about the truth of who I was, even though everyone else had left the building in my life, you know. So in that huge vacuum, I found love with 29 people aged from 60 to 104.
Wow.
And there was no judgment, because there isn't from people at that age. They've come to a place where they just get it. Life is, you know, how it is. So number one, so to take that on, yes, this is here and it is a truth, but it's not the truth of who we really are. We had dreadful bushfires here in Australia. You might have seen and heard about that. And on January the 15th, I saw a newspaper article with a man who was a victim of the bushfires, and he just broke my heart. So I went searching. His name was in the paper, so I just went searching online, found him, rang him, and said, I would like to ring you every day, and I just want to be a point of certainty at a time when you have no certainty.
Oh.
And so I have rung him every day, 5, 10, 15 minutes. I'm not his coach. I'm not his counsellor. I am simply having his back. And I just made a commitment for that. And any one of us can do that. You know, sometimes that is just too large, the whole, you know, thing that's out there. But come back to what's in your circle. And when you're present, he appeared for me. And, you know, the thing that I get is I could counsel him, and if he asked, I would certainly respond. But he talks, I listen, and healing happens in that space. And any one of us can do that. I've also got, maybe this for the last one, all my life, I've been plagued by doubt. I've done lots of extraordinary things, but I've still had personal doubt as a big issue. Yeah. So I have a puppet, and I didn't bring him in, but his name is Doubting Thomas. And so he's become my laughter icon. So having something in your periphery that brings a smile to your face, I mean, it could be a live thing, it could be your dog or your cat, or just something that evokes a smile, that generates that feeling of goodwill. When that happens, the frontal cortex opens and you're pouring oxytocin. So you're not only doing yourself some good, but anyone else who's in your radar is going to receive that as well.
Well, I love that. You know, I think when we feel out of control, right, it triggers a lot of wounds, like you said, just fear and scarcity and all of these things. And so, like you said, coming into what can we control right now? What can we reach for the next best feeling thought, the next best feeling activity, whether that's going outside or just, like you said, pouring into someone else, like being able to support that man. Like, oh man, I'm sure it's been extremely transformative for him. And that's so beautiful. It's so beautiful that you would do that. And
I think too that I think it's a quote from the Dalai Lama: if you wish to know love, provide love for another. If you wish to know peace, provide peace for another. So whatever it is that you're seeking right now, find someone to give that to.
Wow.
Because it'll return, not necessarily from that person, And really, that's kind of the space I had talking to this man. I so wish at the turn of the century I had someone like that show up for me. Mm.
Yeah.
And I also, all through this 19 years, want my words to be a balm. I know how cut I was by those two sentences from my husband on parting. You know, words can tear us apart. So consciously being aware of language and choosing a higher way. And just
Yeah.
begin where you are. You don't have to become vastly literate and eloquent overnight.
Right.
Just go on a journey.
Right. Right. Start where you are. That's the best advice I've ever been given as well.
Yes.
Um, well, share with us what you will be giving away to the audience as part of your free gift or part of what you're offering right now.
Look, I've been recently offering what I call joy jolts. So it's a half-hour complimentary session to just hear where people are at and offer my advice into that space. So 30 minutes. We'll do it on a Zoom or whatever, whatever platform suits for people.
Yeah.
That's what I'd
I
like to
think
offer.
I think everybody's going to be lining up to sign up for that. So we probably should put like a limit on that, maybe like 15 to 20. I don't know what your capacity is, but we'll leave the details underneath this interview, as well as
Okay.
there will be a link to sign up with Pat for that joy jolt in the email that you received this interview in. Pat, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you
Oh,
for sharing
thank you.
your story and your heart, and it deeply resonates with me and my journey, and I'm so glad that we got to connect in this way.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you everyone for watching another episode of Transforming Trauma to Triumph. I'm your host, Diana Min, and we will catch you on the next interview. Bye.
Bye.